Have you been celebrating? You gotta take the dubs when you can, even if they came 100 years too late. Yeah, there we go. We ended politics. We did it. We ended politics. Well done, everybody. He was it. He was the guy. How about a historical recap? Poof. That. A historical recap of everything bad that Kissinger has ever done would essentially just be like, you could read his entire Wikipedia page and that wouldn't even be close to being enough. Like, look, Kissinger is one of the most evil men in the world, and one of the most evil men certainly in American history. I would argue that he was probably more morally bankrupt than like Confederate leaders. In terms of the destruction that he personally caused, he's higher than essentially anyone. I mean, in American history, I mean, like unimaginable. Behind the Bastards did an 8-part series on him alone. Yeah, go take a look at the Behind the Bastards. 8-part series. All right. How does Kissinger compare to Dick Cheney? Not even remote. No. Not even remotely close. You have no idea. Kissinger is like the platonic ideal of an American chauvinist. He doesn't believe in anything. He's not a liberal. He's not a fascist. He doesn't believe in anything. The only thing that he truly believes is might makes right. And because he's on the America team, America has to win. And anything that gets done to that end is the right thing to do. That's it. That's the only belief that he has. There's no consistency to any position that he holds outside of that. Andrew Jackson, I think Kissinger is significantly more evil than Andrew Jackson. You guys have no idea. Basically, like the entire history, like the whole legacy of everything evil that America did during the Cold War, like he's baked into that. He's like the architect of everything in the post-World War II world that made America evil. It's unbelievable. Genuinely. Al Jazeera put out a full article on just all the genocides and coups Kissinger was involved in across 10 different states. That's not even remotely comprehensive. Where's the hater post? Oh yeah, here we go. I had this one ready. Jacobin hated Henry Kissinger so much they wrote a book-length obituary years ago and commissioned 50,000 copies and just let them sit until the mother finally died. Unbelievable levels of hater. I am inspired. The good die young. The verdict on Henry Kissinger. I mean, we can look at the Al Jazeera. What do we have listed here? Let's see. Prolonging the war in Vietnam, which cost the lives of millions of people. Cambodia. Expansion of the war set the scene for the genocidal rule of the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia. Went on to kill 1/5 of the population. That's cool. Carpet bombing campaign killed hundreds of thousands of people. Bangladesh, what was then known as East Pakistan, that won elections. Fearing a loss of control, military government in West Pakistan launched a murderous crackdown. Kissinger and Nixon stood staunchly behind the slaughter, choosing not to warn the generals to hold back. Kissinger was unmoved by the killing of 300,000 to 3 million people. Again, like we're talking about like death tolls in the millions, tens of millions. Again, like this is just like simplifying it too. There are like books worth of shit that he has said. Like he just unimaginably evil. Sagar defended Kissinger on breaking points. Well, considering the fact that Kissinger is basically the only human ever to actually believe in America first. That makes sense to me. The funny thing is that, of course, like Nixon sort of opened relations with China. Kissinger was considered a friend of China to this day, basically. Here. China's Xi Jinping. By the way, Xi Jinping, proletarian state, ally of the global proletariat, welcomes old friend Henry Kissinger in Beijing. This was from this year. So again, China, ally the proletariat. I'm pretty sure this means that the Chinese Communist Party is warmer to Kissinger than Biden's administration. China likes Kissinger because Kissinger basically defended the Tiananmen Square massacre because, again, he doesn't have any real beliefs. China was like the only other country that Kissinger respected. Basically, after Mao did, let's be fair, a pretty amazing like guerrilla war campaign to take over China. There's no denying Mao was an incredible military strategist, at least with regards to like insurrectionary behavior. Basically, Kissinger and Nixon were like, f all these other pussies, okay? And the Soviets are run by incompetent bureaucrats. You, Mao, are strong and based and Chad and red-pilled, so I will respect you and you alone. And during their administration, they actually did like weird pro-China shit that over America too. Like they hid shit from Congress to like like prioritize trade relations with China and try to like get deals for them, basically, in a manner that wasn't entirely like treasonous, but it was definitely like, you know, weird. So yeah, again, it's like the might makes right. You know, it's kind of like how authoritarians in one country like authoritarians in other countries. It's like, you know, his only belief was that his side should win, but because his side was the strong, he thought of China being like kind of on his side. You know, China also aided the U.S. and CIA in Angola and Vietnam and in Cambodia. No, what that was not. That was a sort of a shared, you know. I've seen some Germans today say that the left's rejoicing about Kissinger's death is just another sign of the left's anti-Semitism. Yeah. Whatever. Yeah, I saw this, the ADL post, because ADL would support Adolf Hitler if Adolf Hitler was a Zionist, which I guess to an extent early on he was. From the ADL, Henry Kissinger was a towering intellect, a diplomat and a practitioner who, not without controversy, helped shape American foreign policy with a lasting impact. A refugee from Nazi Germany, blah, blah. Anyway, in a very funny turn, they community notes him. During a meeting of the Washington Special Actions Group, Kissinger said, "If it were not for the accident of my birth, I would be anti-Semitic. Any people who have been prosecuted for 2,000 years must be doing something wrong," which is literally like a Nazi line. Like, oh, see how they kept getting kicked out of European countries? Must be something up with those guys. And he believed that. And the only reason he didn't consider himself an anti-Semite was because he was Jewish, which again, perfectly indicative of how he had no moral positions. He didn't have any morality. He had no like ethical system. It was literally just might makes right, my side must win. That's it. Because he is a Jew, you know, he must like defend the Jewish people, you know, as a sort of extension of his Western hegemony. But that's it. Like, that's the only reason, you know? Yeah, his morality was the United States of America. Nixon called him Jew boy to his face. I'm sure Nixon called him much worse stuff than that. Hillary Clinton considered him a close personal friend. Yeah, that's one of the things that makes Henry Kissinger so evil. Henry Kissinger morally is up there with genuinely like whatever the peg below Hitler is. It's really difficult to describe like his absolute comfort with mass murder, just no shit giving, and for no reason too, you know, purely as a product of his support for Western hegemony and American chauvinism. Barely even Western hegemony. He didn't like Europe either. He just liked America and China. Yeah, purely for the love of the game. You know, this is like a 99% Hitler particle individual. But one of the things that makes him so insidious is that since his term, other politicians and administrations have basically just treated him as like a great diplomat and head of state. Like, there wasn't even this big reckoning after he left where people were like, you know, maybe we should be a little bit more scrutinous of the genocidal mass murderer who was the Secretary of State under the president who, you know, had to resign because he was being investigated for the Watergate scandal. Like, maybe, I wonder if there was something more to that. But no, since then, presidential administrations have continued to invite him to the White House. They have claimed him to be like a friend, a personal friend. They've bragged about their association with Kissinger. Back in 2016, when Bernie was campaigning, he said like that he was proud to not call Kissinger a friend, and that was like unique and different to say like I am not a friend of 99% Hitler, you know, like, you know, that's how low the bar is. It's an indication, if nothing else, that like politics aside, the engine of American empire is capable of permitting basically any and all evil, as long as it's done in the service of America. Nowadays, people will say, you know, even politicians will say, oh, yeah, the Vietnam War was a quagmire. Oh, the Vietnam War was a mistake, you know, but they'll never actually critically examine anything that led to it or any of the people who sort of produced it or engage with them or denounce them in any way, because they don't like ultimately care. They don't actually care, you know, and we're seeing it happen right now. It's happening right now in the Gaza Strip, you know. My favorite quote from Anthony Bourdain: once you've been to Cambodia, you'll never want to stop. You'll never stop wanting to beat Henry Kissinger to death with your bare hands. Yeah, I remember that episode. I think that was an episode that was, right? Yeah. Clip of Bernie Sanders saying he's not a friend of Kissinger. Sure, we'll watch it. We'll watch it.
Where the Secretary and I have a very profound difference. In the last debate, and I believe in her book, very good book, by the way, in her book and in this last debate, she talked about getting the approval or the support or the mentoring of Henry Kissinger. Now, I find it rather amazing because I happen to believe that Henry Kissinger was one of the most destructive secretaries of state in the modern history of this country.
The most destructive, of course. Like, there's no other Secretary of State is within like even an order of magnitude of Henry Kissinger in terms of monstrousness. But you know,
I am proud to say that Henry Kissinger is not my friend. I will not take advice from Henry Kissinger. And in fact, Kissinger's actions in Cambodia, when the United States bombed that country, overthrew Prince Sihanouk, created the instability for Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge to come in, who then butchered some 3 million innocent people, one of the worst genocides in the history of the world. So count me in as somebody who will not be listening to Henry Kissinger.
Emma and Matt Letch in the Majority Report phrased it, saying that what killed him was seeing the possibility of the genocide in Gaza being halted for longer. Oh, you're saying that the temporary humanitarian pause in the Gaza Strip was what killed him. Like he was being fueled sort of by death, by lich energy, and the you know, a very very brief halt to the genocide was all it did to do him in. That makes sense. That fits in with my belief system. Yeah. You can seriously argue that Kissinger was the most destructive American ever. Yeah. With regards to foreign policy, absolutely there's no compare. If you want to include like every American, I guess you'd have to start including like politicians who did stuff regarding like slavery. That being said, I struggle to imagine if any single human did as much bad with regards to slavery in America, I mean, that Kissinger did with foreign policy. I strongly encourage all of you to listen to the Behind the Bastards on him, or to just like spend 18 days reading up his Wikipedia, or just it's unbelievable. Andrew Jackson with the Native American genocides may be comparable on the domestic front. Maybe, like genuinely maybe, because a lot of what's worth pointing out too is that one of the things that makes Kissinger so unique is that he personally did a lot of this. You know, like it wasn't like there was a big political movement and he sort of led it. He was the Secretary of State and he engineered a lot of this shit directly. You know, even people like Andrew Jackson, dude, even people like Hitler had like broad movements of which they were figureheads. There's something so unique about Kissinger. He could have been anything else. And I'm not saying that American chauvinism wasn't like a pre-existing political force that he was a part of, but there's something very, very unique to the extent to which he personally orchestrated a lot of this, you know? Like, I guess a good example of it would be like when people say stuff like Hitler did X, it's usually slightly euphemistic. What it actually means is like Hitler led an effort to do X, but there was like a group of politicians and bureaucrats, and like it was a group effort because, you know, it was a country. Like Hitler led a country. That was what made him so destructive. But a lot of the stuff that Kissinger did seemed to be just him like out of pocket, you know, like he just like kicked that ball rolling down the hill. Does that make any sense? I don't want to minimize anything else. I hope people understand that like Henry Kissinger wasn't just like a bad politician. He was the most evil man. He was a total moral nihilist who was just given the ability to do anything he wanted. And what he wanted was millions dead. And he got it. You know, he got it in spades. Like he could have been like anything else, you know? Would it be worse if he ran for president? Actually, I think that as president, he would have been a lot less destructive. Kissinger was an unpleasant, uncharismatic, unattractive man. And having all of his shit thrown into the forefront like that, rather than having it be laundered by Nixon and Nixon's charisma. And Nixon was a very smart guy, too. So, you know, he knew when to lie and when to shut the fuck up. Lead poisoning is said to have killed over 100 million people. Lead poisoning isn't a guy. Yeah, does anyone remember that Justice League cartoon or whatever? Do you have any idea how much power I would need to give up to be president? Yeah. Mr. Lead B poisoning, yeah. John poisoning. You, Vosh, I personally understudied Mr. Lead. Yeah. Everyone says Kissinger was Rizless, but if I recall correctly, his sexual body count was almost as high as his genocidal body count. I think there's probably a pretty big difference between the kind of charisma that you can like get tail as a politician and the kind of charisma that lets you explain to the American people why you're okay with what the Khmer Rouge is doing. But, whatever. Anyway, it's not good. He and Nixon had sex? Yes, obviously. It's also worth noting that everything he did was done through back channels. He never ran any of this shit through Congress. No. He and Nixon conspired to do an unbelievable amount of shit in the least transparent way possible. Through Congress, past the American people. Nixon and Kissinger shared one major trait which allowed them to work together, and it's that neither of them believed in democracy. They were both very intelligent and insanely contemptuous of the common man for this. They thought that the average American was a idiot. I assume Nixon was still salty because he lost to JFK because JFK was handsome because TV had just been invented. He was pretty mad about that. It wasn't just they didn't believe in democracy. They were insanely contemptuous of it. I am fully sure that if they could have gotten away with it, they would have believed more in a monarchy or an indefinite dictatorship ruled by them in terms of leading the country. There's a Kissinger quote where he says the issues are too important to be left to the voter. He was anti-democracy all the way. Yeah. He wasn't subtle about it. But doesn't that mean he's kind of right? No. Not even a little. Why the administration's going forward to worship him so much? Because no matter what your ideology is, in America, the presumed underlying ideology of every presidential administration has been American superiority and Western hegemony. To challenge Kissinger is to challenge the idea that anything is justifiable if it supports American empire. And that is not a challengeable position, or at least it's difficult to challenge, so many people, if you want to believe in a deep state, he was at the root of it. At least he was part of the root, American elites love Kissinger. This is why a lot of people hate the USA. No. It's not why a lot of people hate the USA. Kissinger is hate of the USA. Kissinger is responsible for when you hear about why people outside of America hate the USA, they just start describing shit Kissinger did. He wasn't just he's the reason why. He is why. Not to say America would have been phenomenal if Kissinger and Nixon, hadn't been leaders or whatever, but holy shit, this guy is yeah. Which is, of course, an indication of the fact that, as smart as Kissinger was, and he was, he was also a moron. If you actually believe in American hegemony and American strength, you wouldn't have antagonized the rest of the world that way. He was a bully, He might makes right. So America is strong, so America should crush the weak, and trample the world. It is our right because we're strong, which is actually a really, really, really bad strategy for long-term, stability. So we now have to deal with, some very legitimate global hatred of the United States for stuff that we did, because for, the Kissinger, so I have to say the Kissinger administration, but basically, sort of laid the groundwork for our inability to cooperate with the rest of the world.